The group chat notification on my iPhone chimed for the 42nd time in an hour. I didn't need to look at it to know what was being said. I sat in my small, sun-drenched apartment, sipping a glass of water, watching the sunset over the city skyline. Specifically, I was looking at the gold-tinted windows of the Vesperia Heights, the most exclusive hotel in the metropolitan area. Sarah, the sister of the birthday girl, Chloe, had been leading the charge. The milestone birthday trip was supposed to be a celebration of Chloe turning 30. Instead, it had turned into a masterclass in passive-aggressive budgeting. When the survey went out, I was the only one who didn't play the I'm cool with whatever game. I was specific. I was honest. I told them, I am a 32-year-old woman with a demanding career. I snore. I have a 3-step skincare routine that takes 40 minutes. I need a private sleeping space. I will pay for it. Apparently, in the world of Sarah and her inner circle, honesty is a cardinal sin if it costs them an extra $40. The 3-bedroom Airbnb they had voted for was a cramped, IKEA-furnished nightmare. 8 women, 3 beds, 1 pull-out couch. Do the math. That's 2 people per sleeping surface. I looked at the photos of the queen beds and felt a physical wave of anxiety. I didn't know half of these women. I wasn't about to spend my weekend playing footsie with a stranger for the sake of group cohesion. When I politely declined and booked a single room at the Vesperia, 2 blocks away from their rental, the chat went nuclear. It's just so divisive, Elena, Sarah had typed, followed by 3 sad face emojis. By pulling out of the house, you've increased the cost for everyone else by $35. Some of us actually have to watch our bank accounts, you know? Not everyone is as independent as you. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Sarah was currently wearing a rented Chanel suit in her profile picture, while her credit card debt was likely orbiting the moon. She didn't want to save $35. She wanted me to subsidize her lifestyle. I arrived at the airport in a pair of faded leggings and an oversized hoodie. I looked like I was heading to a 6 a.m. shift at a warehouse. Sarah and the others were already there, draped in fast fashion versions of old money aesthetics, clutching overpriced lattes. Oh, look who decided to join the little people. Juliana, Chloe's cousin, sneered as I approached. Did you manage to find a hotel that met your royal standards, Elena? Or are you going to complain that the pillows aren't stuffed with swan feathers? The group erupted in a chorus of giggles. Chloe looked at me with a sympathetic wince but stayed silent. I'm just here for Chloe, I said, my voice calm, flat, and devoid of any defensive edge. The hotel is just a place to sleep. My presence at the dinners and activities remains the same, except you've already ruined the vibe, Sarah snapped. We're supposed to be a squad, bonding. Now, every time we pay a bill, we're going to remember we're paying the Elena tax. I hope your privacy is worth the fact that everyone thinks you're being a total jerk. I reached into my bag and pulled out my tablet. I was looking at the real-time revenue reports for Meridian Hospitality Group. My personal net worth was currently sitting at $142 million. To them, I was the difficult friend who couldn't afford to be chill. To me, they were a line item in a social ledger that was rapidly approaching a zero balance. The $35, I said, looking Sarah directly in the eye. I've already Venmo'd it to you, including the transaction fee. So, the Elena tax has been settled. Can we go now? Sarah's face flushed. She hadn't expected me to call her bluff so clinically. Fine. But don't expect us to wait for you when the Uber Black arrives. There's only room for 7 in the XL, and since you're so fond of traveling solo, that's perfectly fine, I replied, a small, cold smile playing at the corners of my mouth. I've already arranged my own transportation. As we walked toward the exit, they huddled together, whispering and casting jagged glances back at me. They thought they were winning. They thought they were punishing me. They didn't see the black sedan with tinted windows waiting at the curb. They also didn't realize that the VIP group discount Sarah had bragged about getting for tonight's dinner was a courtesy extended specifically to employees of my holding company. I was about to show them exactly what happens when the person providing the vibes decides to clock out. The black sedan pulled up to the curb of the Vesperia Heights exactly 2 minutes before the Uber XL carrying the squad rattled past toward their east side rental. I watched from behind the tinted glass as Sarah pressed her face against the window of the rideshare, her mouth tightening when she saw the doorman in a gold-braided livery bowing to me. She probably thought I'd spent my last cent on a single night just to spite them. She had no idea that the presidential suite on the 42nd floor was perpetually reserved for executive ownership, which meant me. Inside the suite, the air was perfectly chilled. A bottle of 2012 Dom Perignon sat in a silver chiller, a courtesy from the hotel manager. I didn't touch the champagne. I changed into a simple, charcoal gray silk slip dress and a pair of vintage heels. No logos. No loud patterns. Just the kind of quality that someone like Sarah wouldn't recognize unless it had a giant designer logo plastered on it. The group chat was vibrating again. Sarah was posting photos of their Airbnb. It was exactly as I'd predicted. The third bedroom was actually a converted walk-through closet with a pull-out sofa. Juliana was complaining about the lack of a full-length mirror. Elena is probably sitting in a shoebox room right now just to prove a point, Sarah messaged. We might have to share beds, but at least we have the vibe. Dinner at Lozo Blue at 8 p.m. sharp. Elena, try not to be late. They have a very strict policy about the group being present to honor our 40% VIP discount. I smiled, a thin, predatory line. The 40% discount was part of a legacy agreement between the restaurant and my holding company's local partners. I opened my laptop and sent a single, encrypted email to the restaurant's general manager, Andre. Andre, there is a reservation for a party of 8 under the name Sarah Vance. They are claiming a corporate partnership discount. Please perform a rigorous audit of their credentials upon arrival. If they cannot provide a valid employee ID, please revert the pricing to the standard weekend holiday rates. Also, ensure they are seated in the secondary lounge area for safety reasons. At 7:55 p.m., I walked into Loiseau Bleu. The restaurant was a cathedral of Art Deco design, all brass, velvet, and low-frequency jazz. The squad was already there, huddled at the reception desk. Sarah was waving her phone around, her voice rising in that shrill, entitled frequency. I told you, we have a VIP corporate booking. Sarah was snapping at the hostess. We've been coming here for years. Check the system again. I'm sorry, Miss Vance, the hostess said, her voice a model of professional ice. The system shows the discount code was flagged for verification. Since you cannot provide a corporate ID, your table is now located in our garden terrace annex. The garden terrace was a polite term for the enclosed patio right next to the service entrance where the smell of trash bins occasionally drifted in. I stepped forward, my heels clicking softly on the marble. Is there a problem, Sarah? Sarah spun around, her eyes widening as she took in my dress. She looked like she wanted to vomit from jealousy. The restaurant messed up our booking. It's fine, we're just going to sit in the terrace. It's more rustic anyway. You're lucky we even let you sit with us after you made everyone pay more for the house. Actually, I said, looking at the hostess, I won't be joining the party for dinner. I have a private tasting scheduled in the cellar. But please, proceed. I'm sure the rustic atmosphere will be great. Juliana scoffed. A private tasting? In your dreams, Elena. You probably just booked a seat at the bar because you can't afford the menu now. Something like that, I replied. As they were led away to the drafty terrace, I caught Sarah looking at the main dining room with a look of pure longing. She had spent weeks bragging to Chloe about how she had hooked them up with the best seat in the house. Now, she was going to spend the evening shouting over the sound of clinking dishes and waitstaff running orders. I sat down in the wine cellar, where Andre himself decanted a rare Bordeaux. The audit, madam? He asked quietly. Let them enjoy their meal, I said, swirling the dark liquid in my glass. Let them order the expensive appetizers. Let them think they're still getting 40% off. We won't present the standard bill until the very end of the night. I want them to feel the full weight of that $35 they were so worried about. The trap was set. They thought I was the one being difficult. By the time the dessert menus arrived, they were going to realize that difficult was a luxury they could no longer afford. The garden terrace was as miserable as I had envisioned. From my vantage point near the wine cellar's glass partition, I could see them. The squad was shivering in their thin wraps as the evening breeze kicked up. Sarah was loudly ordering the seafood tower and 3 bottles of the most expensive Chardonnay on the menu. She was still playing the big spender, convinced that my corporate discount would shave $400 off the final bill. I watched Chloe. She looked uncomfortable. She knew something was off. But Sarah, fueled by a mixture of spite and cheap social climbing, was doubled down. "Don't worry about the price, girls," I heard Sarah shout. "We saved so much on the house, and with the VIP discount Elena provided, this meal is practically a steal." Juliana laughed, dipping a lobster tail into butter. "I still can't believe she's hiding in the cellar. She's always been so dramatic about her boundaries. Imagine being so stuck up you'd rather sit alone than share a bed." I turned away from the glass and signaled to Andre. "It's time," I whispered. I walked out of the cellar, straight into the main dining room. I took a seat at the central booth, the one reserved for the guest of honor. A moment later, the mayor's chief of staff and two of the city's biggest real estate developers joined me. They saw the woman who held the leases on their campaign offices. "Elena, wonderful to see you," the chief of staff said. "I hope the Vesperia is treating its owner well." "Excellently, Mark," I replied, my voice projected just enough to catch the wind. 10 minutes later, the storm broke. I saw Andre approach Sarah's table with a leather-bound folder. The laughter on the terrace died instantly. Sarah's face drained of color as she opened the bill: the seafood tower, the wine, the premium water. And at the bottom, the total, calculated at the holiday peak rate with a 20% automatic service charge. No 40% discount. No VIP courtesy. The total was north of $2,400. Sarah's hand was shaking. "There's a mistake. We have a code. Meridian 5. Alpha. Check it again." Andre bowed slightly. "I'm afraid that code was flagged for verification, Miss Vance. It belongs to the executive suite of Meridian Holdings. The CEO's personal assistant informed us that no such group was authorized to use it tonight. In fact, they've requested a full audit." "That's impossible," Juliana shrieked. "Elena gave us the info." "Go get her." "The lady in the cellar?" Andre asked, feigning surprise. "Oh, you mean Miss Vance. She isn't in the cellar anymore. She's hosting a private meeting at Table 1. He gestured toward me. 8 heads snapped in my direction. They saw me sitting with the power players of the city. They saw the way the waitstaff hovered around me like I was royalty. Sarah stood up, her chair screeching. She marched toward my table, her face a mask of panicked rage. "Elena, what the hell is this? The waiter says the discount is gone. You did this, didn't you?" I didn't stand up. I didn't even stop cutting my steak. I waited until I had chewed and swallowed before looking up at her. "Ruining it, Sarah?" I asked softly. "I paid my $35. I settled my debt. What you're looking at is simply the market price for the lifestyle you've been pretending to live. You told us you were a manager," Sarah hissed. "You lied to us." "I never said I was struggling," I replied. "I said I was a logistics manager. I just didn't mention that I managed the logistics of an entire hospitality empire. I never lied. You simply assumed that because I don't wear my net worth on my sleeve, I didn't have one." "Fix this," Sarah pleaded, her voice cracking. "Elena, please. We can't afford this. My card is at its limit. The logistics of your personal finances aren't in my job description, Sarah," I said, turning back to my guests. "I believe your party is still expected to settle the bill before the police are called for theft of services." I went back to my conversation. Behind me, the sound of Sarah's frantic sobbing began to blend with the jazz. A satisfying rhythm to accompany a very expensive meal. The scene at L'Oiseau Bleu ended in a frantic, humiliated scramble. Sarah and Juliana were forced to call their parents and partners, sobbing into their phones while the waitstaff watched with practiced indifference. They eventually scraped together the $2,400, leaving the restaurant looking like they'd just survived a natural disaster. I, however, finished my dinner, shook hands with the developers, and took a private elevator back to the Vesperia Heights. I was waiting in the lobby when they arrived 40 minutes later. They looked haggard, their outfits wilted and smelling of the terrace's trash bins. Sarah saw me sitting in a plush velvet armchair, scrolling through my tablet. She charged at me, her face blotchy from crying. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she screamed. "You humiliated us. You set us up. We almost got arrested because of your little power trip. I'm telling Chloe everything. I'm telling her you're a fraud and a snake." I didn't look up from my screen. "Sarah, you're making a scene in my lobby. Please lower your voice. Your lobby? Juliana barked. Give me a break. You probably just work here and use your employee discount to sit in the fancy chairs. We looked you up on LinkedIn, Elena. You're a logistics coordinator. That's a desk job. You're just a glorified secretary playing dress-up. I finally looked up. I tapped a button on my tablet and turned it toward them. It wasn't a LinkedIn profile. It was the internal corporate structure of Meridian Hospitality Group. At the very top, in a single, isolated box, was my name, Elena Vance, sole proprietor and chairperson. Below my name was a list of assets, 14 hotels, 22 restaurants, and the very management firm that Juliana's father worked for. A logistics coordinator, I said, my voice as cold as the marble floor. Yes, I coordinate the logistics of who stays in my hotels and who is permitted to use my corporate accounts. And tonight, I coordinated your exit from all of them. Sarah grabbed the tablet, her eyes scanning the documents. Her breath hitched when she saw the current asset valuation line, $142 million. But that wasn't the part that broke her. Her eyes moved to the recent activity log. Reservation cancellation, party of 8. Location, the East Side Loft. Reason, violation of subleasing terms. Sarah's phone chimed. Then Juliana's. It was the Airbnb notification. Their booking had been cancelled effective immediately. What is this? Juliana stammered. Why did they cancel? We paid. We have another night. You paid the owner of the loft, I explained. But the owner of that loft is a subsidiary of my real estate firm. Your budget rental was an illegal sublet. As the primary leaseholder, I've decided to terminate the agreement. Security is currently moving your bags to the sidewalk. The silence that followed was absolute. They stood there, homeless in a city they couldn't afford, with bank accounts drained. Elena, please, Chloe finally spoke up. It's my birthday. Where are we supposed to go? It's midnight. I looked at Chloe. I told you I understood, Chloe. And for you there is a room waiting. But for the rest, especially the ones who thought $35 was worth more than my dignity. I turned back to Sarah. You wanted to keep things simple, Sarah. You wanted to save a few bucks by ignoring my one request. Well, look at the math now. You lost your discount. You lost your house. And you're going to lose your audience. I signaled to the head of security. Miss Vance and her associates are no longer guests of this establishment. Please escort them to the curb. Sarah tried to grab my arm, but security stepped in. As they were led toward the revolving doors, I pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. Sarah, I called out. She turned, a flicker of hope in her eyes. I tossed the bill onto the floor at her feet. Take a bus, I said. And don't bother changing the codes to the house. I bought the mortgage on that, too. You'll be receiving the eviction notice on Monday. The doors swung shut, cutting off her final scream. I was left in the silence of my own empire, perfectly alone, just the way I liked it. The rain began to fall just as the security team cleared the perimeter of the lobby. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass of the Vesperia Heights, I watched the silhouettes of 7 women huddled under the meager shelter of a bus stop. Sarah was waving her arms frantically, likely trying to call an Uber that she could no longer afford. Juliana was sitting on her suitcase, her head in her hands. The squad was no longer a squad. They were 7 strangers bonded only by a shared sense of catastrophic failure. Chloe was the only one left inside. She stood near the concierge desk, looking small and fragile against the backdrop of gold leaf and polished obsidian. I walked over to her, my heels echoing in the now quiet lobby. Your key is waiting at the desk, Chloe, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. Suite 3802. It has a view of the park. There's a gift waiting for you on the bed. A real birthday gift. Chloe looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. Elena, I'm so sorry. I should have said something. I wanted everyone to get along. Wanting everyone to get along is a luxury for those who don't have to carry the weight, I replied. But you watched them treat me like a servant. You watched them mock my career and my boundaries just to save the price of a cheap lunch. Silence isn't neutrality, Chloe. It's an endorsement. Are you ever going to forgive them? She whispered. Forgiveness requires a debt that can be repaid, I said. They don't owe me money anymore. I took that from them tonight. What they owe me is respect. And that's a currency they've already proven they don't possess. So no, I won't be forgiving them. I'll simply be forgetting them. I turned to the concierge. Ensure Miss Chloe's stay is impeccable, but remind her that her guests are strictly prohibited from entering the premises. If Sarah Vance or any of the others attempt to enter the elevators, call the police immediately. No exceptions. Chloe nodded slowly, realizing that the bridge wasn't just burned, it had been dismantled and sold for scrap. I spent the next hour in my office on the top floor, signing the final paperwork for the mortgage acquisition of the Vance family estate. The eviction notice will be served at 9 a.m. on Monday, Elena, my lawyer said. They'll have 48 hours to vacate. Good, I said, staring out at the rain-slicked city. Make sure the locks are changed the second they step off the porch. I want the house listed for sale by Tuesday. Donate the proceeds to a local shelter for women in transit. It seems fitting. As he left, I felt a profound sense of stillness. They had tried to cram me into a shared bed, to squeeze my life into their narrow, cheap definitions. They thought they could use my humility as a footstool for their vanity. They were wrong. I sat down at my desk and opened the group chat one last time. There were hundreds of messages, pleas, apologies, and insults. I didn't read them. I simply hit delete group and then block all. I walked to the window. The bus stop across the street was empty now. They were gone, haunted by the memory of the woman they thought they knew. I picked up my phone and made one final call. Update my schedule for Monday. I'm going to spend the morning watching a house become a home for someone who actually deserves it. I took a sip of my now cold water. It tasted like victory. Not the loud kind, but the quiet, logical kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and exactly what you're worth. In the grand theater of life, many people mistake kindness for weakness and silence for absence. They believe that status is something you wear, rather than something you own. Elena's story isn't just a tale of wealth or revenge. It is a clinical dissection of the cost of integrity. When we allow others to trample our boundaries for their convenience, we aren't being chill, we are devaluing our own existence. True power doesn't need to scream to be heard. It operates in the quiet spaces, in the spreadsheets, and in the firm no that refuses to be negotiated. In the end, the most satisfying revenge is not seeing your enemies suffer, but watching them realize that the very person they looked down upon was the one holding the keys to the world they so desperately wanted to inhabit. Respect is earned in the trenches of character, not bought on the installment plans of vanity.